America is the place where anything can happen. America is the place where anyone can rise. And here, on this land, on this soil, on this continent, the most incredible dreams come true. This nation is our canvas, and this country is our masterpiece. We look at tomorrow and see unlimited frontiers just waiting to be explored. Our brightest discoveries are not yet known. Our most thrilling stories are not yet told. Our grandest journeys are not yet made. The American age, the American epic, the American adventure has only just begun. Our spirit is still young, the sun is still rising, God's grace is still shining, and my fellow Americans, the best is yet to come. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much.
The polls have Biden up like 6 points, and I mean, I think in order of signs it goes Trump, firewood for sale, and then Joe Biden.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to provide the American people with an update on our efforts to protect the integrity of our very important 2020 election. If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us. If you count the votes that came in late, we're looking at them very strongly, but a lot of votes came in late. I've already decisively won many critical states, including massive victories in Florida, Iowa, Indiana, Ohio. To name just a few, we won these and many other victories despite historic election interference from big media, big money, and big tech. As everybody saw, we won by historic numbers. And the pollsters got it knowingly wrong. They got it knowingly wrong. We had polls that were so ridiculous, and everybody knew it at the time. There was no blue wave that they predicted. They thought there was going to be a big blue wave. That was false. It was done for suppression reasons. But instead, there was a big red wave. And it's been properly acknowledged, actually, by the media. They were, I think, very impressed. But that was after the fact. That doesn't do us any good. We kept the Senate despite having twice as many seats to defend as Democrats. And in a really much more competitive states, we did a fantastic job with the Senate. I think we're very proud of what's happened there. We had many more seats to defend. They spent almost $200 million on Senate races in South Carolina and Kentucky alone, 2 races, and hundreds of millions of dollars overall against us. At the national level, our opponents' major donors were Wall Street bankers and special interests. Our major donors were police officers, farmers, everyday citizens. Yet for the first time ever, we lost 0 races in the House. I was talking to Kevin McCarthy today. He said he couldn't believe it. 0 races, very unusual thing, 0. And actually won many new seats with, I think, many more on the way. This was also the year of the Republican woman. More Republican women were elected to Congress than ever before. That's a great achievement. I won the largest share of non-white voters of any Republican in 60 years, including historic numbers of Latino, African American, Asian American, and Native American voters, the largest ever in our history. We grew our party by 4 million voters, the greatest turnout in Republican Party history. Democrats are the party of the big donors, the big media, the big tech, it seems, and Republicans have become the party of the American worker, and that's what's happened. And we're also, I believe, the party of inclusion. As everyone now recognizes, media polling was election interference in the truest sense of that word by powerful special interests. These really phony polls, I have to call them phony polls, fake polls, were designed to keep our voters at home, create the illusion of momentum for Mr. Biden and diminish Republicans' ability to raise funds. They were what's called suppression polls. Everyone knows that now. And it's never been used to the extent that it's been used on this last election. To highlight just a few examples, the day before election, Quinnipiac, which was wrong on every occasion that I know of, had Joe Biden up by 5 points in Florida, and they were off by 8.4 points, and I won Florida easily. So they had me losing Florida by a lot, and I ended up winning Florida by a lot. Other than that, they were very accurate. They had him up 4 points in Ohio, and they were up by 12.2 points. And I also won Ohio, great state of Ohio, very easily. The Washington Post had Biden up 17 points in Wisconsin, and it was basically even. They were off by about 17 points. And they knew that. They're not stupid people. They knew that. Suppression. There are now only a few states yet to be decided in the presidential race. The voting apparatus of those states are run in all cases by Democrats. We were winning in all the key locations by a lot, actually. And then our numbers started miraculously getting whittled away in secret. And they wouldn't allow legally permissible observers. We went to court in a couple of instances, and we were able to get the observers put in. And when the observers got there, they wanted them 60, 70 feet away, 80 feet, 100 feet away, or outside the building to observe people inside the building. And we won a case, a big case, and we have others happening. There are lots of litigation, even beyond our litigation. There's tremendous amount of litigation generally because of how unfair this process was. And I predicted that. I've been talking about mail-in voting for a long time. It's really destroyed our system. It's a corrupt system. And it makes people corrupt even if they aren't by nature. But they become corrupt. It's too easy. They want to find out how many votes they need, and then they seem to be able to find them. They wait, and then they find them. And you see that on election night. We were ahead in vote in North Carolina by a lot, tremendous number of votes. And we're still ahead by a lot, but not as many, because they're finding ballots all of a sudden. Oh, we have some mail-in ballots. It's amazing how those mail-in ballots are so one-sided, too. I know that it's supposed to be to the advantage of the Democrats, but in all cases, they're so one-sided. We were up by nearly 700,000 votes in Pennsylvania. I won Pennsylvania by a lot, and that gets whittled down to, I think they said now we're up by 90,000 votes, and they'll keep coming and coming and coming. They find them all over. And they don't want us to have any observers, although we won a court case. The judge said you have to have observers. Likewise in Georgia, and they're appealing. Actually, they're appealing. We won a case that we want people to watch, and we want observers, and they're actually appealing, which is sort of interesting. I wonder why they'd appeal, that all we want to do is have people watch as they do the vote tabulations. Likewise in Georgia, I won by a lot, with a lead of over getting close to 300,000 votes on election night in Georgia. And by the way, got whittled down, and now it's getting to be to a point where I'll go from winning by a lot to perhaps being even down a little bit. In Georgia, a pipe burst in a faraway location, totally unrelated to the location of what was happening, and they stopped counting for 4 hours, and a lot of things happened. The election apparatus in Georgia is run by Democrats. We also had margins of 300,000 in Michigan. We're way up in Michigan, won the state. And in Wisconsin, we did likewise fantastically well. And that got whittled down. In every case, they got whittled down. Today, we're on track to win Arizona. We only need to carry, I guess, 55% of the remaining vote, 55% margins, and that's a margin that we've significantly exceeded, so we'll see what happens with that, but we're on track to do okay in Arizona. Our goal is to defend the integrity of the election. We'll not allow the corruption to steal such an important election, or any election for that matter. And we can't allow anybody to silence our voters and manufacture results. I've been doing a lot of public things for a long time. I've never had anything that's been as inspirational, by people calling, talking, sending things to us. I've never seen such love and such affection and such spirit as I've seen for this. People know what's happening, and they see what's happening, and it's before their eyes. And there are many instances which will be reported very shortly. There's tremendous litigation going on, and this is a case where they're trying to steal an election. They're trying to rig an election, and we can't let that happen. Detroit and Philadelphia, known as two of the most corrupt political places anywhere in our country, easily cannot be responsible for engineering the outcome of a presidential race, a very important presidential race. In Pennsylvania, Democrats have gone to the state Supreme Court to try and ban our election observers, and very strongly. Now, we won the case, but they're going forward. They don't want anybody in there. They don't want anybody watching them as they count the ballots. And I can't imagine why. There's absolutely no legitimate reason why they would not want to have people watching this process, because if it's straight, they should be proud of it. Instead, they're trying, obviously, to commit fraud. There's no question about that. In Philadelphia, observers have been kept far away, very far away, so far that people are using binoculars to try and see, and there's been tremendous problems caused. They put paper on all of the windows so you can't see in, and the people that are banned are very unhappy and become somewhat violent. The 11th Circuit ruled that in Georgia, the votes have been in by Election Day, that they should be in by Election Day, and they weren't. Votes are coming in after Election Day. And they had a ruling already that you have to have the votes in by Election Day. To the best of my knowledge, votes should be in by Election Day. And they didn't do that. Democrat officials never believed they could win this election, honestly. I really believe that. That's why they did the mail-in ballots, where there's tremendous corruption and fraud going on. That's why they mailed out tens of millions of unsolicited ballots without any verification measures whatsoever. And I've told everybody that these things would happen, because I've seen it happen. I watched a lot of different elections before they decided to go with this big, massive election with tens of millions of ballots going out to everybody, in many cases totally unsolicited. This was unprecedented in American history. This was by design, despite years of claiming to care about the election security. They refused to include any requirement to verify signatures, identities, or even determine whether they're eligible or ineligible to vote. People are walking in there. They have no idea. They're just taking numbers. They're writing down things, the workers, and doing a lot of bad things. And we have a lot of information coming and litigation that you'll see that will shake even you people up. And you've seen it all. The officials overseeing the counting in Pennsylvania and other key states are all part of a corrupt Democrat machine that you've written about, and for a long time you've been writing about the corrupt Democrat machine. I went to school there, and I know a lot about it. It hasn't changed. It's a long time ago, and hasn't changed. It's gotten worse. In Pennsylvania, partisan Democrats have allowed ballots in the state to be received 3 days after the election, and we think much more than that. And they're counting those without even postmarks or any identification whatsoever. So you don't have postmarks, you don't have identification. There have been a number of disturbing irregularities across the nation. Our campaign has been denied access to observe any counting in Detroit. Detroit is another place, and I wouldn't say it has the best reputation for election integrity. Poll workers in Michigan were duplicating ballots, but when our observers attempted to challenge the activity, those poll workers jumped in front of the volunteers to block their view so that they couldn't see what they were doing. And it became a little bit dangerous. One major hub for counting ballots in Detroit covered up the windows again with large pieces of cardboard. And so they wanted to protect and block the counting area. They didn't want anybody seeing the counting, even though these were observers who were legal observers that were supposed to be there. In Detroit, there were hours of unexplained delay in delivering many of the votes for counting. The final batch did not arrive until 4 in the morning, and even though the polls closed at 8 o'clock. So they brought it in, and the batches came in, and nobody knew where they came from. We've also been denied access to observe in critical places in Georgia. In multiple swing states, counting was halted for hours and hours on election night, with results withheld from major Democrat-run locations only to appear later. And they suddenly appeared, and they all had the name Biden on them, or just about all. I think almost all. They all had the name Biden on them, which is a little strange. I challenge Joe and every Democrat to clarify that they only want legal votes, because they talk about votes, and I think they should use the word legal votes. We want every legal vote counted, and I want every legal vote counted. We want openness and transparency, no secret count rooms, no mystery ballots, no illegal votes being cast after Election Day. You have Election Day, and the laws are very strong on that. You have an Election Day, and they don't want votes cast after Election Day, and they want the process to be an honest one. It's so important. We want an honest election, and we want an honest count, and we want honest people working back there, because it's a very important job. So that's the way this country is going to win. That's the way the United States will win, and we think we will win the election very easily. We think there's going to be a lot of litigation because we have so much evidence, so much proof, and it's going to end up perhaps at the highest court in the land. We'll see. But we think there'll be a lot of litigation because we can't have an election stolen like this. And I tell you, I have been talking about this for many months with all of you, and I've said very strongly that mail-in ballots are going to end up being a disaster. Small elections were a disaster. Small, very easy-to-handle elections were disastrous. This is a large-scale version, and it's getting worse and worse every day. We're hearing stories that are horror stories, absolute horror stories. And we can't let that happen to the United States of America. It's not a question of who wins, Republican, Democrat, Joe, myself. We can't let that happen to our country. We can't be disgraced by having something like this happen. So it will be hopefully cleared up, maybe soon, I hope soon, but it'll probably go through a process, a legal process. And as you know, I've claimed certain states, and he's claiming states, and we can both claim the states, but ultimately I have a feeling judges are going to have to rule. But there's been a lot of shenanigans, and we can't stand for that in our country. Thank you very much.
And welcome to the Joseph Furley Show. Guys, this is a great day in America. Now, the reason I say that is for several reasons. Number one, we are finding out the rats in the swamp. And all the little swamp creatures are coming out, and which is great. And I think Trump has set these guys up for a doozy coming up, a massive fall coming up. You know, we're not even in winter yet, but there's going to be a massive, massive fall. You know, what fun would it be if the votes were counted correctly and Trump won by, almost all the states? What kind of fun would that be? This is fun. We're going to have some fun. And you need to realize this, that President Trump won by a landslide. And if you remember, those landslides will take the rocks, the boulders, the pebbles, the twigs, all the debris down the hill. And we soon will have a clean Capitol Hill, I believe. So anyway, we have some great things for you today on the show. We're going to bring out the different articles of the left, the Luciferian left. Maybe we should call them the LL, the Luciferian left. What the Luciferian left has been doing in America. And they thought that they got away with it. Well, in 1917, we're going to read an article about Lenin that basically did the same thing. And, the left has no ideas. They can copy, but as far as imagination, zero. So it's an old playbook, and we're going to show you what that playbook is, of course, coming right up. So let's get into the very first story.
I'm going to donate $500,000 tonight to President Trump's Defense Legal Fund. I've been on your show. You've raised a ton of money for me. Your audience was incredibly helpful to lindseygraham.com. Give to donaldjtrump.com so we'll have the resources to fight. The allegations of wrongdoing are earth-shattering. It makes the Carter Page warrant application look on the up and up.
Well, if you remember yesterday, we brought up on the show about how there's not a lot of guys out here supporting President Trump. So, Lindsey Graham comes out here with $500,000 that he's going to donate to President Trump's legal defense fund. And trust me, $500,000 is, it'll go that quick, but it is something. So here's my challenge. Where's Ted Cruz? Where's your $500,000? How about John Cornyn? Want to give up some of that money, John? I'm hearing crickets over there so far, but that's okay. We're going to stay on you, John, Ted, to make that contribution to President Trump's defense fund, legal defense fund. Now, the reality is this. President Trump doesn't need the money. He has plenty of money, and he has paid a lot of his money during this election. He has spent his own money. And that's why the Luciferian left hate President Trump. They can't buy him. They can't bribe him. They can't kill him. Of course, they've tried several times, and still they can't do it. They have tried everything they can possibly try to get President Trump out of the way, including the biggest RICO case in world history has transpired. And we're going to show you that right here. Hopefully today. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get to it this morning on this morning's broadcast, but by this afternoon, we're going to show you how they have cheated severely. All right. Let's get into our second story, which is going to be some headlines. Okay, the first time I saw this was actually at, it's 9 hours ago, 2:20 this morning, 2:20 a.m. on November 6th. And here's the headline on Twitter from President Trump. And it says, so now the Democrats are working to gain control of the U.S. Senate through their actions on John James, David Peru, and more would end the filibuster. Life, Second Amendment, and would pack and rotate the court. Presidency becomes even more important. We will win. Well, that's absolutely right, President Trump. We will win. All right, let's see what else we have on the headlines. Yes. I did want to cover this. And this is Trump traps Democrats. Ingenious. Sting operation set in motion 2017. Well, now if President Trump can do that, don't you think that he is smart enough to know about William Barr? See, because I still hold out faith for William Barr here. All right, State of the Nation, even though I can't get this on the screen. Trump traps Democrats. Ingenious sting operation set in motion in 2017. Election fraud. Democrats still don't know they got caught by the brilliant sting operation orchestrated by Team Trump. Really, how stupid do the Democrats think the American people are? Well, they think they're pretty stupid. I'll promise you that. They really do. They believe that this is the old days, but this is a massive decade of difference. Massive. And you're going to see that coming up pretty soon. Who didn't know that the DNC has planned this POTUS election theft since the last election day, November 8th, 2016? Oh, sorry. Hey, I need to find that. There's some butt salve that we need to get for the Democratic Party. I want to find that picture and get that put up. All right. The Democratic Party colluded with the deep state and New World Order globalist cabal have had 4 years to steal this election, and yet they still screwed it up royally. Well, gee, who would imagine that? The Democrats screwing something up? You remember we told you that this COVID-19 nonsense, this was all about the election. This was their backup plan. Hey, let's get everybody in a mask, right? And let's put the boogeyman out there. And then let's get these hospitals and doctors to talk about this. Now, guys, we wrote about it in our book called Destroying the Altars of Baal. The trifecta, the trinity of evil, as far as professions go, is, number one, the medical industry. Number two, how about that? The doctors. And number three, of course, religion. Selling you completely down the road, perverting the truth to deceive the American people. So, let's get into this article a little bit more. I don't think I want to read the whole thing, just kind of want to cover the headlines. This is alternative news, analysis, and commentary. And let me see if I can. All right, guys, can you get that on the big screen over here? I'd like to be able to see it. Well, not a problem. Even a political imbecile knows that the longer any election count goes on, the greater the likelihood that election will be stolen. Well, of course it does. The thieves simply need time to do all the dirty deeds necessary to steal the ballots without leaving any fingerprints. Guys, their fingerprints are all over this thing. It's relatively easy to steal an election, but only when no one's watching the crime scene. Well, guess what? That's been part of the crime scene, is nobody's watching. On Election Day 2020, the whole world was watching the countless Democrat-overseen crime scenes across America. Not only that, Team Trump had the whole country cased out, especially the previous Democratic 2016 crime scene. Now that the Dems have gotten caught red-handed with election theft, what are they going to do? Intelligent analysis and former U.S. military officer. Well, I think they're going to do what they always do, and that is more riots. That's what I think, personally. But let's go back to the text. The sting operation, just as the Democrats had 4 years to come up with a plan to steal POTUS 2020, so did Team Trump to foil that convoluted scheme. In point of fact, President Trump has access to more privileged data and classified information than any person on the planet. The President of the United States has the surveillance and investigative power of the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the DHS, and the DIA at his beck and call. Break from the text for a moment. Don't you think he listened in to all the plots and plans with the Florida shootings and all this other nonsense that's going on? You don't think he knows that? Sure he does. He's played these guys like a fiddle. Back to the text. Given these and many other hard realities, did the Democrats really think they could just steal the election and inaugurate a Biden-Harris administration without scrutiny or protest? Yeah, they did, because they're delusional. What Trump did here was quite coyly create an atmosphere of impunity. In this way, the Democrats were lulled into a false sense that they could get away with stealing the election in broad daylight, which they're attempting to do at this very moment. Stupid, stupid Democrats. Okay, sorry, back to the text. Meanwhile, Trump team has had every likely crime scene under extreme surveillance and digitally monitoring the entire time. There's not a single move or maneuver by the Democrat perps which has not been watched, witnessed, and recorded. In other words, the Prez has gotten them all dead to right. There are many pieces to this sting operation that are way beyond the scope of this expose. Suffice to say, there's a presidential plan in place that's being executed with absolute precision. And that, in their sheer desperation, the left has thus far fallen into every trap that was secretly set for them. Where to set the biggest trap was as easy as pie. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, etc. Sorry, guys, I couldn't help it. The most naked and reckless election theft in U.S. history. Break from the text. Now, guys, I call it the biggest RICO crime that has ever happened. The hard evidence is now pouring in. The Democrat criminals left that hard evidence all over the numerous crime scenes. In their recklessness and desperation to win at all cost, the co-conspirators on the grounds acted like they could get away with bloody murder. In some cases, it might appear that they have, as good folks, have been murdered in this blue crime wave, but covered up for the time being. It was this false sense of security that made for some very sloppy crime scenes. Those committing all the crimes at the voting precincts made so many mistakes it boggles the mind. And in most Democratic dominated precincts, they didn't even try to cover their tracks. You see, Pelosi owns the software used to collect and distribute election voting tallies. You know, this just reminds me of you can't make this stuff up, man. I'm telling you. There's no reason to ever go to another Hollywood movie again, right? Because reality is so much better than anything Hollywood could put together. All right, back to the text. The bottom line here is that when you're trying to get away with the most naked and reckless election theft in U.S. history, you better have an escape route mapped out, because Trump posse is coming to get them one by one. Conclusion. President Trump let them do exactly what the Democrats are doing in each battleground state in real time. He had to first let them commit the crime so that they can do the time. Once Biden declares victory after grabbing the necessary 270 electoral votes, this immense blue crime wave will come crashing down for good. Then Team Trump can begin the process of prosecuting the many Democratic VPs and lefty henchmen who are guilty of carrying out this complex criminal conspiracy at every level. In the meantime, it's of paramount importance for every patriot to understand that the following warning is still in effect. Warning: election theft in progress. Caveat: the Democrats have had 4 long years to steal this election. Ellipsis, ellipsis, ellipsis. So they will not fail unless the right poses an overwhelming force of patriot and truthers which execute a countervailing strategy that proves the obvious and legitimate Trump victory. In other words, POTUS needs our support until the perps are taken off the street. Source: Election Theft 2020. The steal begins in earnest. No matter what happens going forward, remember that Trump won the election and Democrats are perpetrating election theft in real time. State of the Nation, November 5th, 2020. recommended reading. Election Theft 2020. It's much worse than anyone knew. Hey, what a great article. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave you for this afternoon. But I'll be back tonight with some great intel on election theft. Dun, dun, dun. Maybe we should have a little. Hey guys, put together a news roll there. All right. See you later today.